Good afternoon. We're here at the National Museum of American History chatting with entertainment curator Ryan Lintelman about these puppets. This is a showcase at the museum that's called Puppets and Muppets. It's up until January 8th. I'm Maya Stern with NPR Live, and this is Ryan.
Hi.
Ryan.
Hello.
And if you have any questions about the puppets and Muppets and marionettes that you'll see here, just throw them in the comments and we'll get to them if we can. So tell us a little bit about this exhibit.
Sure. Well, obviously it's a pretty busy day here. I'm
Yes,
sure that people online can hear this ambient noise and hear a lot of people here, but this is, one of our most popular collections here at the National Museum of American History is our puppets, and I'm the curator that gets to work with the entertainment collection, which is a real thrill.
Entertainment curator.
Yeah, it is. So, that includes the Ruby Slippers and, Archie Bunker's chair from All in the Family. A lot of the things that help define our culture in the past, 200 years. And so it's a really great collection, but the Muppets are, in particular, one of our most popular collections, and all of the puppet collection.
Yeah.
But the really neat thing about these is that they help to explain and to show us, some of the things that happen in our cultural history, but also broader American history. So some of the things that you see on display here, speak to changes in media and the way that the nation interacts with each other, but also just things that people love and remember from their childhood. So, for instance, Cookie Monster and Elmo here. We get a lot of, comments whenever we don't have Muppets on display. So we wanted to be sure for the holiday season here that
Bring
we
the
had
Muppets back.
We had some Muppets out, and everybody can come down here and bring their kids or family that's in town and see, some of these most popular Muppets and puppets that we have. So.
You were telling me earlier about how Cookie Monster came to be Cookie Monster.
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story?
Sure. So this is one of the original Cookie Monster puppets that we have here. And so not a lot of people know this, but before the Muppet Show and before Sesame Street, Jim Henson was actually heavily into advertising. So in early television, he created a lot of these puppets on commercials like for Wilkins Coffee here in D.C., but just for commercials all over the country. And so for General Foods in 1966, he created a commercial for a new set of snack products. They were cheese crackers called Crowns, Flutes, and Wheels. And the original Cookie Monster was actually the Wheel Stealer. So in this commercial from 1966, it was never aired, he would come up to a bowl of Wheels crackers and just, go to town and eat them. So that was the sort of birth of Cookie Monster. So he appeared in different commercials over the years and, some of the other things that the Hensons did for The Tonight Show. And eventually he was in a skit that they did where he's a contestant on a game show, and he's given a choice of 3 prizes. He either gets a brand new car, $10,000, or a cookie. And he wanted the cookie. And so that's how he got his name, and he was known as Cookie Monster ever after.
So good. I thought he just generally liked cookies.
Well, he does. And a lot of people online might know this, but in the past 10 years or so, he's actually moved away from being just a Cookie Monster. He loves all kinds of foods, and so he's
free cookies.
Yeah. He says cookies are a sometimes food, not an always food.
Sometimes food.
Yeah.
And is this the original Cookie Monster? Or?
This is one of the originals. We're not sure if this is the one that was made for that commercial in 1966, but it dates to at least 1969. So this is that was the year of his first appearance on Sesame Street, the year that show premiered. And a lot of people know him from his song "C is for Cookie."
Yes.
And so that premiered in 1971
Cool.
on the show.
We have a commenter saying Cookie Monster was never green, but Wheel Stealer was green?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And you can see he's kind of an in-between color. I don't know how well that's registering on your camera, but he's sort of more turquoise than the current Cookie Monster that's all blue. So, and actually, while we're looking at all the Muppets here, Jim Henson always described the first Kermit as a milky turquoise. He looks more green to me, but that's what Jim Henson always said.
Yeah, so let's talk about this first Kermit.
Sure.
And this is before he was Kermit the Frog.
Yes, yeah, he was just Kermit. This was the Kermit that was on Sam and Friends, which was Jim Henson's first television show. It aired here in the D.C. area on WRC-TV, which is the NBC affiliate, still is today. And Jim Henson went to the University of Maryland here in town. As a student, he was able to start making puppets, and he really wanted to be on TV. And so he started doing 5-minute segments on this local NBC affiliate, and it was Sam and Friends. So on the left here is Sam, and on the right is Kermit. They were 2 of the many characters that were on the show. But the first Kermit, this is the original Kermit puppet here, it was made from Jim Henson's mother's green felt coat. So that's what you see here. He cut it up and made the Kermit puppet. And then there's actually a pair of his jeans sticking out of the bottom there as the armhole.
Oh, yeah.
And Kermit's eyes are made from a ping pong ball split in half.
Nice.
And one of the things that Jim Henson really innovated with, like I mentioned, he wanted to get into TV. He wasn't a puppeteer by trade to begin with. But he really wanted to do TV, and he came at it from a different angle than a lot of people who'd studied puppetry. And so he made puppets from a variety of different fabrics and materials and made them much more flexible, and they were really designed for television more than they were the old style of marionettes and that sort of thing. So they were really flexible and energetic, and they had their own characteristics and personalities more than puppets had in the past. So what was really important to him was the characters' eyes and that they'd be very expressive.
You were telling me earlier, I mean, this looks like Jim Henson here is holding Kermit with one hand, but in order to make Cookie and Elmo and some other characters come to life, you need a second puppeteer.
Yeah.
Right?
If you swing back over here, you can see the difference between this early Kermit and the Cookie Monster. Wait until she gets a chance to come back. Cookie is bigger. So you can see Kermit you would be able to control just with one hand, and that was, always Jim Henson in the early days was Kermit and did the voice of Kermit. But Cookie Monster is actually done by two puppeteers. So it would usually be Jim Henson in there with one hand in Cookie's mouth and the other in usually his left hand. And then there'd be a second puppeteer controlling his right. So you think about this, how did that work? How could they stay coordinated? Well, another one of these early innovations that the Hensons did, Jim and Jane Henson, was to use television to its fullest extent. So they would have a live TV monitor down beneath them while they were doing the puppeteering so that they could watch in real time what they were doing and stay coordinated. So they just had to learn to watch and move backwards because the TV would reverse the image, so they had to, figure that out. But it was a small group of people who worked together, especially in the early days when it was Jim and Jane Henson and Frank Oz and maybe just a few other people.
Right.
And they really learned to work together as a team. So.
And for this show, Sam and Friends, it was just Jim and his wife Jane.
That's right. That's right. And they even started before they were married. It was kind of almost a business marriage at first, and they were working together, and they fell in love and got married. And so, and this museum, it was really great. We were able to get these. The Muppet collection from the Henson family. So they were always very interested in preserving the legacy of Jim and Jane Henson, and Jane was involved in the donation in 2013.
Nice. We have a commenter asking how he washed them, and you were telling me a little bit about how these are conserved, so they're in the cases here.
Yeah, that is a really good question about how they were washed. I was thinking about that earlier today, especially that there weren't a lot of these puppets to begin with, but like I mentioned, that Jim Henson and Jane Henson were using a lot of new materials, a lot of latex foam, and plastic wood is what the head of Sam there is made out of. So these new materials allowed them to be more flexible, but over time they've actually been a concern for the museum. Obviously here we're in the forever business at the Smithsonian. We want to keep everything around forever. And so we have to find new ways to do conservation on these. And that's a museum term that just means, keeping them clean and intact. And, all of these materials deteriorate over time. So what we have to do is find ways to mitigate that deterioration. So that's why things are in cases in museums, to keep dirt and environmental conditions away from them that could negatively impact them over time. So even light and humidity and temperature changes are some of the things that really can hurt these fabrics and materials over time. So the conservators here at the museum have this job ahead of them where they study these materials and try to figure out how they can preserve them. So it's a really unique job.
Huh, interesting. So before we move on to some of the other puppets in the cases, I really just want to read the list of character names from Sam and Friends.
Sure.
Because they're so awesome. Okay, so we have Sam, Kermit, Harry the Hipster, Yorick, Professor Madcliffe, Chicken Liver, Hank and Frank, Muskmelon, Icky Gunk, that's my favorite, Henrietta, Moldy Hay, Omar, and Pierre the French Rat.
Yes.
Okay, now we can move on.
Well, we didn't get to talk about Elmo at all.
Oh yeah, Elmo.
We can just mention Elmo. This is a puppet from 1984, which is sort of when Elmo became the Elmo that we know today. He was designed as early as 1979 in a different form, and he was just sort of known then as a child monster. He didn't really have much of a personality of his own. But in 1984, the puppeteer Kevin Clash came up with the sort of falsetto voice and the very innocent, naive Elmo personality that we know today.
Right.
And so he puppeteered He was the Muppeteer for Elmo up until 2012, so he really developed that personality for him.
Yeah.
And Elmo became hugely famous in the 1990s because of Tickle Me Elmo, which was released in 1996 and was the hot toy that year.
Oh boy.
And sort of the archetype of that hot Christmas toy. So, and he was on the Rosie O'Donnell show a lot then, and had Elmo's World as his own segment on Sesame Street. So, he's a celebrity here at the museum.
Not to move on from Elmo too quickly, but someone just asked if Kermit has always been the same size, which is an interesting question.
That is an interesting question.
It definitely looks maybe like the same size.
We have another Kermit from a little bit later. He was used on the Muppet Show, and he's a little bit bigger, now that you mention that. A lot of these Muppets, there would be different sizes designed for different uses. So, for instance, some of them are hand puppets like this one, but in sequences where they need to be active or running or things like that, they have a little bit different design, and they'd be in front of a green screen. Or so there are different sizes of Kermits, but not too far off.
And another commenter, Phil, is asking if there are multiple copies of each puppet.
Yes.
There are.
And now the Muppets and all of the Henson creations are under the mantle of Disney, and so they're continuing on the legacy of that. But different copies were made for different uses. Some of the things that we have in the collection here are the originals or very early editions. So.
All right, shall we move on?
We'll move on, yeah.
I am curious about who these creatures are in this case.
Yeah,
I'm
so
not familiar with them.
these are definitely less familiar to a lot of visitors. And so on the left here, you see Perez and Martina. They're marionettes from 1942. This was from a puppet show that was based on a Puerto Rican folktale, Perez and Martina. It's about a marriage of Perez, who's a mouse, and Martina is a cockroach. So those are the marionettes that you see here.
Oh, wow.
And this folktale is old, but it was first written down by a New York storyteller and librarian named Pura Teresa Belpre. She wrote this folktale down in 1925 and it was published in 1932. So these are marionettes from that.
I like his shoes. These are very cool.
One of the fun things about this exhibit that some visitors don't realize is the marionettes are being held by hands up there. I don't know if you're able to get those in the shot.
Yeah, that's really high.
It's just
up
kind
there.
of, our designers had
That's
fun with
cool.
that. So.
I just wanted to reset briefly as we switch cases. To all our viewers, we are at the National Museum of American History. We are talking about this exhibit called Puppets and Muppets with Ryan Lintelman, the entertainment curator. And we just saw Cookie and Elmo and Sam and Kermit. And now we are going to meet some new friends.
Yes. So.
I'm curious about Mr. Bunny Rabbit and Mr.
Oh, yeah.
Moose over there.
Well, I'll
you
just
can
briefly,
see-
since we're looking at these, for those people who are online and can't read the labels, I can just tell them who we're looking at before we head over there, if you want.
Yeah, we'll see these
Yeah,
little
so
guys.
this is Sleepy Slim the Lion and Jump Marionette. So these were from a radio serial that was on at Christmas time in the 1940s. And then these puppets were actually made for a television show that ran from 1950 to 1954 in Los Angeles in the NBC affiliate there. So this was started as a Christmas promotion like the Cinnamon Bear. People might be more familiar with that one, but this is just a unique piece of entertainment history because it moved from radio to television in the early days, and so you can see that overlap. A lot of media properties overlap now, but it happened from the switch to radio to television at that time too. And then down here you see some Jump dolls and a train, so there were these commercial tie-ins there too, even in the 1940s and 50s. So a lot of people went to department stores to buy these toys of Jump too.
So, do you have more puppets in this museum
Yes,
too?
we have hundreds of puppets, and they tell the entire history of America. I mentioned that's the fun thing about the entertainment collection. We sometimes can see the link really easily between All in the Family being on television, people talking about what's happening in politics, but it's sometimes harder to see the connection between puppets and what's happening in the country and its history.
Yeah.
But some of the puppets that we have are very relevant. Like there's a temperance show from the 19th century that was taken around by a minister, and he would show what happened if you drank too much. That there are puppets that are a guy who descends into drunkenness and then dies and becomes a ghost. And so there are some things that tie into those political and social movements in the country, as well as some that are just for entertainment, like these.
So this is, can we move on to Captain
Yeah,
Kangaroo?
yeah.
Some people are excited about Captain Kangaroo.
Yeah.
So when was this show on?
So this was on, it was created in 1955, and it aired on CBS until 1984, and aired for a few more years and on PBS until 1992. So it's one of the longest running children's television shows, surpassed maybe only by Sesame Street, which has been on now for 47 years.
Wow.
But a lot of people remember Captain Kangaroo, and these are some of our other most famous puppets, because a lot of people remember Bunny Rabbit and Mr. Moose. So
Yeah.
these are some of the puppets that were on that show. Of course, Captain Kangaroo was played by Bob Keeshan, and so that's how we were able to acquire these puppets as the production was running down. We got them from Bob Keeshan Associates. So Mr. Moose had this funny prank that he always played on Captain Kangaroo, where he would drop ping pong balls on his head. I'm sure that people remember that. And Bunny Rabbit loved carrots.
Yeah.
So we've got, some of the real standouts from early children's television here, beyond Sesame Street, also Captain Kangaroo, and then Howdy Doody. So some of these promotional puppets on the top here show characters from Howdy Doody, which was really a groundbreaking television show. Began in 1947 and went until 1960. And Bob
I love how
Smith,
they're held up by those hands.
Yeah, so that's another way our designers were having fun. So these are finger puppets, all of these over here. So I wonder if anybody recognizes these on our Facebook page here.
Maybe we can have people guess the bottom three,
Oh, sure.
because they look sort of familiar. All right, can you guys guess who these bottom three are?
More promotional puppets here.
Yeah, promotional, sort of commercial. I don't want to give too much away, although I totally could. Well, we can come back, see if people guess who these bottom three guys are. A striped shirt. Oh, okay.
Hey,
Mary
Mary
Lou.
Lou.
And Emily. It's true. They are Snap, Crackle, and Pop.
Well done.
Jessie.
You can see on his hat.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Well, we'll still give you credit.
they're definitely familiar figures. And these were promotional if you collected a certain number of Rice Krispie
Yeah, you
cereal
could send away for
boxes,
these
or-
from Kellogg's. And
Yeah.
so, we were talking earlier about the tie between puppets and advertising. So here's another instance of that. It's sort of, these didn't start as puppets, but there was a puppet tie-in. These were created by the illustrator Vernon Grant and cartoonist Don Margolis. And so they were supposed to be the what is it? Onomatopoeia, thank you.
Yeah.
Onomatopoeic sounds that are made when you pour
Snap,
milk onto your Rice
crackle, and
Krispies.
pop.
So there you go.
I want a bowl of
That's
Rice Krispies
a 50
now.
cent word, thank you.
And who are these last two in the middle here?
So these are Pinocchio and Pinocchian finger puppets. These represent the collection that we have of sort of commercially available puppets. These were made by Hazel Rollins, who had one of the country's leading toy puppet manufacturing companies. And so we have a collection of those. So you could have gone into a department store in the 1930s and bought these for Christmas time for your children, So just to show the range, we've covered advertising history here. We've covered commercially available puppets and then puppets that were on television or in puppet shows. So we really try to show the broadest range of the way that puppets factor into American life.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. And some people are saying they hear the crowds in the background, so they appreciate this personal tour we just gave them. Hope you all can come see the exhibit. Is up until January 8th.
That's right.
But there are many more puppets at the museum. So, thank you for joining us, and thank you, Ryan.
Absolutely.
This has been quite
Yeah,
a treat.
Thank you.
We
And thank
love
you all
seeing
for
them.
signing in and visiting with us here today.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.